Why would I want to fly fish for gar? And while I'm here, how do I do it? No worries, we'll jump right into that after this. It's good. I'm feeling it. All right. Welcome to Geek on the Water. If you're brand new here, my name's Jacob Nixon. Sorry, I don't want to touch the mic. Whoop! Let's back it up a little bit.
So, I just got pulled over. On my way to the river right now, and I was going 57 in a 45. This is me publicly admitting that I am a sinner, criminal. I'm a ward of the state. I cannot obey the rules. I am just a straight up rebel.
Man, I love that new intro. If you're brand new to the channel, consider subscribing. Geek on the Water is someone who's not going to be mainstream, sometimes considered socially inept, but is so weird and obsessed with what they do that it's just contagious, okay? So I'm hoping that my excitement and the excitement of those that join me on this channel comes right through the screen to you and just shows the true passion of what it means to get out on the water and fish for what you love. This should be a good day. Conditions look great. The water does look a lot more tannic and murky than I want it to, but I think the gar is still gonna be able to find these flies that I've tied up for them. There's actually 7 species of gar. The first one is the Cuban cigar, as you can see. I said it. I told myself I wasn't gonna say it. So the first one is the Cuban gar, okay? Not the Cuban cigar. It's just so easy to say Cuban cigar. Let's move on. The next one we're going to talk about is the tropical gar. It is in the tropics. I do believe, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it is a saltwater gar. I don't know much about them. The next gar on our list is going to be the Florida gar. I witnessed those actually when I was in the canals in Miami. Andy Bagwell, a fellow Instagrammer, actually has caught them before. This was not on the fly, but this is a picture of him with one of his Florida gar he's caught in the past. The dude is an excellent angler. I'm going to leave a little link description to his Instagram as a thank you for letting me use his picture. So thanks, Andy. Your next gar is going to be the short-nosed gar. It honestly, as you can kind of look at it, it's got a little bit shorter snout than other gar do. The 5th branch of the species is the spotted gar. Possibly the most well-known species because of all the publicity it gets, because of how big it is the alligator gar. This is the largest of the gar species. It is humongous. That is a monster gar. I think it's around 6 foot. I'd have to ask him again myself. That gentleman actually is Josh Dolan, another friend of mine that actually lives here in Virginia. He's another fellow Instagrammer. I'm going to leave a link to his Instagram account in the description below as a thank you for letting me use his picture. The last species of gar, which is going to be the star of the show today, is the longnose gar. Longnose gar is actually pictured right here with another friend of mine, is the administrator of a Facebook group called Gar on the Fly. So if you are looking for other people that are fly fishing for gar or looking for some good how-to information outside of this video, it is a great community. Just search Gar on the Fly. Him being the administrator will be the one that approves you to join. The only thing we ask is that you, of course, respect the species of gar, so we're not looking for anyone that's bow hunting for them or anything like that. That's not really welcome in the group. We don't want to see any gar hanging from trees. We want to kind of practice catch and release. Even though they're considered a trash fish, we obviously value them more than maybe the average fisherman. I'll try to leave a link to that group too in the description. The gar species, I think all 7 of them have a primitive lung. That primitive lung allows them to survive in low oxygenated water. That's probably part of the reason that they're considered a trash fish. You're going to find them in almost any kind of water. They can survive better than most species in those murkier, grosser waters. First real good take, real good fish. You just saw in the background another one surface up there. They are everywhere right now. There's 2 main approaches to fly fishing for gar, at least as far as flies. First one I will talk about is going to be the most common one you see when you Google how to fly fish for gar, or what kind of flies do I need for gar, and that is the rope fly. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think one of the reasons that the rope fly gets the most coverage in the fly fishing world for gar is that the rope fly is very specific to the species. Their teeth are so close together and there's so many of them that when they bite into a soft nylon rope, it will get tangled up there a lot of times. The other GAR fly that you can use is going to be a stinger hook fly. So you've got a typical streamer in the front, just white, bait fish patterns, colors, whatever you want to do. The idea with the stinger hook, as you can see in this picture here, the fish will hopefully hit the body of the fly, hold on to it, and then when you set the hook, that stinger is going to essentially floss and hook them in the jaw. This is probably the most debated topic in fly fishing for GAR. So if you have any opinions on it, feel free to comment below with those. I'd love to hear just even more feedback on who thinks, is a stinger hook better or is that rope fly better? Flies do not have to be pretty. It's really going to be more of just making sure you have something that looks like a bait fish and you can tangle or hook them with. So the next thing we want to talk about is the presentation of the fly. Where do you want to cast? Treat them like a fish. Just because they're prehistoric dinosaurs and they got gnarly teeth doesn't mean they're not afraid of you. So just try not to be seen. Try not to spook them with the cast. When that fly gets in the water, you want to make sure you're getting it down to where they are, but not sinking too fast because you want to stay wherever that strike zone is as long as you can. Don't cast over their backs. They're just like any other fish. You don't want to spook them that way. Now listen to me. This is a really important thing to understand about how to set the hook. You want to let them eat it. If you feel a little subtle bump on your line, as much as you want to strip set right away, let it go 20 feet, maybe 10 feet, long enough to where you kind of feel like they're starting to fight it a little. The rope fly has started to tangle in their teeth, or that stinger hook has kind of gotten to a place that's uncomfortable to them, and they're kind of starting to shake it loose. That's when you can set the hook. Anytime you're fishing a streamer, you want to hit that streamer set. So straight ahead, tip at the fish, pull that line, don't bend the rod. Once you feel the weight on the rod, then you can bend the rod. You're using varying retrieves. Some days a hotter fly might get their attention. Some days a slower fly might get their attention. What you got to do is read the room. Location, location, location. How do you locate GAR? One of the reasons we're going to talk about longnose GAR the most in this video is it is actually the most abundant GAR of the GAR species, at least in America. Their range, if you see on this map here, stretches really far. If you're in a crowded area where there's lots of boats running around, kayakers, other things like that, you probably want to get away from that area. Even if there are GAR in the area, they're probably not going to be readily feeding. So go and find a more secluded opportunity to go after them. Ask other anglers that have maybe seen GAR when they're out fishing to go straight to the source of your local game and fisheries experts. So give them a call, your game and fishery biologist. They'll probably be excited to nerd out with you for a minute or two about GAR. If you're in a river system, a lot of times you're going to find them in a river bend where the water's kind of slowed down, in a slower paced area. Because they have that primitive lung, they have to come up and breathe for air every once in a while. When you get to your location, spend some time looking for the rising GAR. If you find a GAR rising, there tends to be other GAR around, and also the GAR that came up and rise is probably going to be a chance that you can catch that GAR too. Probably the segment that a lot of fly anglers love, gear. I'm not going to talk about fancy gear or anything like that, just going to get into general basics. What we're going to recommend for GAR on the fly is going to be anywhere in the 6 to 8 weight range, very similar to the peacock bass video. You don't need to have a mega rod, but you also don't want to go with a light rod because there's just no really need to. You can fight these fish pretty well on a 6 to 8 weight rod. What I recommend is going to be usually a floating line, or if you are going to use a sinking line, go with an intermediate sink tip. What you want to do is sink slowly. You don't want these flies to sink fast into the water column unless you're trying to get down to the bottom. You know the fish are there. Vary that, but more often than not, these GAR, you're going to have a strike zone where they're at, and you're going to want to kind of count it out, find them. And then once you start getting hits, you're going to strip, 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 and get those hits. When it comes to handling, you also want to be very careful, not just for the fish's health, but for your own. They have those sharp teeth, and they're going to make some wild thrashes, especially the big ones. Along with your pliers and your jaw spreaders and everything, bring a sharp knife or scissors to cut that thread out if you're going to be using a rope fly. That will save you lots of time, will help care for the fish better. Just be careful. It's a little bit more toothy than most of the species you're catching out there. Maybe it's nothing like a bass or a trout. It's going to have some prehistoric teeth in its mouth that you don't want to get caught. That's it for gar on the fly. Hopefully you learned something or got a little refresher before you go back out on the water. It's kind of a geeky species to go after, honestly. Not everybody's doing it. It's definitely not mainstream, so keep in mind the idea that maybe not everybody's going to be proud of your catches. Please share below if you got any kind of cool tips or ideas about gar fishing. Thanks again for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.